Micah Checka. 1, 2. Sounds good, or at least looks good on this end.
Kettle corn.
Onward to victory.
Stop rocking the boat.
Stop rocking the kettle corn. Onward to kettle corn. Kettle corn. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Embassy Exclusive. This is a monthly supplemental show for fans of the VG Embassy Game Music Podcast. I'm Ed.
I'm Joe.
I'm Todd.
And each month we get together and share video game music, the latest news in gaming, and our 100-year-old opinions on both. This is episode 54 for February 2024. Hope you all enjoy it. This is our 100th episode celebration continuation, more or less. The 100th episode just came out a couple weeks ago. As I mentioned on that show and the show before that, we're going to celebrate a little bit more on this one with some testimonials and write-ins from fans and listeners, and we'll chat about it a little bit more, the history and the lore of VG Embassy. I've been looking forward to doing this for quite a long time. How you doing, guys?
Not bad. It's been a good month. Been playing a bunch of different things and excited to talk about it.
Sweet. How about you, Todd?
Yeah, about the same. Can't complain.
Playing a lot of games and looking forward to talking about it?
Yep.
Cool. Good to see we're all on the same page here. I've been playing one game, and I'm looking forward to talking about it, so... but catch us up. What you been up to, Joe?
Well, I finally finished Final Fantasy 16. At the end of the day, I'm glad I played it, but only because it's a Final Fantasy game and I felt like I had to. The story was great, but the gameplay I found to be kind of lacking. It wasn't difficult in the least, and as I previously complained about, the music was just not there for me, and that's one of the biggest things that I like about the Final Fantasy games.
Yeah.
I had my fun. I kind of wanted it to end sooner than it did, because I was like, oh, I've got a few more hours of this, I guess. On PS5, it tells you, what % done you are with a game, and I found myself looking at that. Oh man, I've got another 30% to go. But I had to see it through because it's a Final Fantasy game, and I do that with all of them. But ultimately, I was kind of disappointed. It wasn't what I was hoping it would be.
Well, at least there are 15 other Final Fantasies to play. Well, probably 14 other ones if you don't count the online.
I've got I'm planning to play Final Fantasy 3 pretty soon. That's the only one of the original games that I've, not spin-offs, that I never completed beginning to end.
Japanese 3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have the Pixel remaster of it, so I'm looking forward to actually playing that one through.
Sweet.
Meanwhile, I'm playing Inscription at your recommendation.
That's right. We had a little Inscription party. It was fun.
I got through the first act of it, and I just started the second act, the one where you're stuck in the cabin. And I'm sure there's a very easy solution to it, but when I got there just last night, I was not in the best mindset to make sense of any puzzles. So I said, the heck with this, and got a snack instead. So I'm sure it's super simple, and I'm gonna figure it out in 30 seconds. But for some reason, I couldn't last night, so I turned it off after getting to that point. But I like the deck building. It seems a little too random for my taste. I keep building up a really good deck, getting just the right cards, but I don't draw them because the game forces me to take cards that I don't want.
Yeah.
I wish you had an option to just say, nope, don't want to do that. Just, I don't need another card. Just let me move on. I'm happy with the ones I have.
The second act, once it gets all pixel art, is much more skill-based. So you're not relying as much on luck as you are when you're in the cabin at first.
That's cool. So I'm enjoying that one, and I'll definitely keep playing that for a while. I'm still playing Marvel Snap, although, like I said, for each of the last couple of weeks, I don't feel any pressure anymore. I kind of feel myself starting to get tired of it, so I might play that a little bit every now and then. I don't think I'll actually delete it anytime soon, but I definitely don't feel like I need to play right this second, like I did, towards the end of last year until I actually finished it. I think I keep going back to that one because it's on my phone, and I'm not used to having games on my phone, and I can play it at any time.
Yeah.
If I have 10 minutes, during a lunch break, or if I'm like waiting to pick up my kid from something, I just play a round or two, and they're really quick rounds, which I like. So I think I'm going to be looking for other games like that to fill that void once I'm done with Snap.
Cool.
So I'll be looking for some recommendations from you guys, or maybe from listeners, about free or at least free to play strategy or deck building kind of games for Android. So if you're out there and you have ideas about this, please let me know.
Yeah, I think Slay the Spire's on mobile.
Yeah, that's a great one, and I had my fun with that one. But
you already played it?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. I played that extensively on Switch 2 or 3 years ago, and
Gotcha.
had a good time with it. It's as good as people say. If you're into deck building, this one is probably the best one out there. Slay the Spire is, that is.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, more power to anyone who wants to give that one a try. But I'm looking for something different at this point.
Well, if you find anything, let me know, because I would be on the lookout for something like that for my phone as well. I'm glad that you got into Inscription. That's really cool. I'm glad that our little... I had kind of like, I guess, an informational / tutorial session on it. We all got together, had some beers, played the game for a couple of hours and had some fun. And I'm glad I was able to change your mind, because it's a very rewarding game once you get your mind around it.
I was going into it with the wrong mindset originally. I was like, oh, okay, sure. I'm just going to sit down, and a perfect strategy will definitely mean I will win. And it doesn't work that way. You have to lose a bunch of times to create better cards. And I didn't get that the first time through.
Yeah, that's the... Once you realize it's kind of like a roguelite action game built into a deck building game, then that gameplay loop kind of becomes more familiar.
I also printed out a piece of paper with what all the different symbols on the map mean.
Good idea, yeah.
Just so that when I'm trying to plan which route I want to take, I know if I'm going to the card sacrifice altar versus the pelt trader, thing. And I like knowing ahead of time what they stand for. And for some reason, because they're pixel art and not necessarily, I'll say, sharper images, I wasn't able to commit them to memory. So I just printed it out.
Yeah, that
printed
works.
a thing out, and that makes it easier to plan my path.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. What about you, Todd? How much Inscription have you been playing?
0. I've played none, with apologies to those who are fans of it. I just don't think it's for me.
You gave it a shot. You even came over to try it out again, and if it doesn't suit your fancy, then, nothing wrong with that.
Right. I don't remember if I said I was playing a game called Here Comes Nico the last month. Had I started that?
Familiar. It's something that you might have been like wanting to get into, or
I think you brought it up, but didn't tell us much about it.
Yeah,
it touts itself as a casual 3D platformer, and it is exactly that. It's very laid back, and it's got kind of like a Paper Mario type of a art style to it. Like it's like paper thin 2D sort of characters, but in a 3D environment.
Neat.
Type of thing. It is very much a casual platformer, kind of a wander around the world and find things to do and do them, and no pressure. There's no death or anything like that. It was fun. It was short. I played it and I finished it. I played a game called Tartarus Key on Switch, which is a
unlock the fish sandwich.
Yes,
with the Tartarus sauce.
Exactly. It is a sort of horror game, kind of in the vein, believe it or not, of like The Seventh Guest, where in each room there is a puzzle that you need to solve. And you're sort of in this old mansion, and very weird things are happening, and you don't really understand what's going on. And every time you enter a new room, there isn't a puzzle in the room itself is a puzzle. So almost kind of like an escape room type of a thing as well. Kind of a mix between those two concepts. And it's PS1 style graphics. Okay. So if that is something that sounds interesting to you, it was also short, but I enjoyed it. It was very good.
Are they like... So I'm trying to think here. Have you played The Room at all, or any of the Room series?
I have seen it. I have not played it.
Puzzle boxes, and then sometimes it moves out to where like the actual room is the puzzle. But I was wondering if the puzzles are more like escape room style puzzles, or if they're more like, like 7th Hour or 11th Guest or whatever. You have like that chessboard where you have to just move the knight around the board until it gets in the right spot, like that kind of a puzzle.
It is largely there is a puzzle in the room. It could be an object in the center of the room, it could be just a means of opening a door, like a code or something like that.
Okay.
And you need to seek out the clues or pieces of the puzzle that you need in order to solve it within the room.
Gotcha. Okay, that sounds more my speed. Some of the puzzles in like Seventh Guest were just
No, and none of the puzzles were so incredibly difficult that like I took it took me a long time to figure them out, or I had to go to the internet in order to solve them. Definitely challenging, but not so much so that like I was completely stumped.
all right. So if you like that game, check out the Room games. There's 4 Room games, and then Room VR, which I know you don't have a VR headset, so you wouldn't bother about that one. But they're all pretty cheap now because they're a couple years old. And then there's also what's it called? House of Da Vinci, which is very similar to, and there's 2 of those games. And it's basically like, working your way through like an old Italian monastery, but each room is a puzzle and you have to get through them. So if you dig them, those are some other suggestions.
Okay,
Stuff
cool.
that I had fun with.
I'm still playing Final Fantasy X. I'm nearly done with it. It is more difficult than I remember it being when I first played it on the PS2 way back in the day, or more challenging than I remember it being. I definitely had to try some of the bosses more than once. And maybe that's just my failing as a gamer. I don't know.
Maybe Titus is just more of a bitch now than he used to be.
Yeah, that could be. That could be. I'm playing a Metroidvania called Haiku the Robot,
Ooh, I saw that one.
which is not one of the insanely difficult type Metroidvanias, but is fun and has its challenges nonetheless.
Cool.
Is that one that's in black and white?
No, it's not in black and white.
Oh, I've seen some previews of a few that came out for Switch all around the same time, and that was one of them. Gato Roboto was the black and white one that I'm thinking of.
Oh, yeah, that's been out for a while.
Yeah. I think Haiku the Robot's been up for quite some time now.
Okay.
It's a few years anyway.
Interesting.
I'm playing that on Switch, and I'm tinkering around a little bit with Timespinner on PC, which Joe has high praise for, so that's another Metroidvania. I don't know its difficulty level yet. I haven't really played that much of it.
That one's really solid. My only criticism about that one was that it was too short. That was a game where they could have doubled the length of it, and I would have been just as excited.
I've decided
Spun more time.
I like short games. It makes me feel like I'm actually accomplishing something, and they're over before I get tired of them.
It's easy to keep that backlog lower when you're not spending so many hours on every single title.
Yeah, that too.
I've got a couple of huge games on my to play list coming up at some point this year. I've got to get to Elden Ring at some point. I've got to play the new Horizon game. What? Not new, new a couple years ago.
Yeah.
New to me. And those are going to be 100-hour plus fiascos for sure. So I'm looking for stuff to, I'll say, bridge that gap still. I need some like 10 to 20-hour games to keep me interested for a while.
Cool. Yeah, I've been playing a little bit more of Tekken 8, and I was kind of in it just for the story. I mean, the fighting is really good too, but the story is kind of a letdown as like stories go. It's, bad guy summons bigger bad guy to fight the good guys, and bad guy beats the other bad guy after he tries to kill that bad guy, and then becomes even more powerful, and now it's just the bad guys versus the good guy. Tekken has had some really cool stuff with like, Heihachi and like two different warring companies kind of like waging civil war with each other in the background, and then in the foreground are these, fights that kind of take place, but there's not a lot of that interpersonal stuff going on, and it's really just a very basic anime story. So unless it gets better, I'm probably a good half to 3/4 of the way through it at this point, but if you're playing it for the story, this one's kind of a letdown. I will play through it eventually, but I'm not racing to do it every single day. I briefly mentioned, I think, a game called The Long Drive last month, which I had just started getting into. I've been watching a lot of YouTubers play, and it looked fun. I think I've put about 20 hours into it over the course of this last month, and I am just absolutely loving it. It's one of those games where I'll hype it up, and then, like SnowRunner or something, you guys will look at gameplay and be like, really? Which is just the kind of games I like.
To be fair, I don't think I've ever actually seen SnowRunner in play.
Well, that's fair. It's a beautiful game, but it takes you like, you see like a mountain the top of a mountain half a mile away. 20 minutes later, you're finally up there, and I'm like, yeah, and everyone else is like, I could have walked faster than that. But this one is it's a journey of 5,000 miles. There is a road on this randomly generated huge swath of land, or did I say 5,000 miles? 5,000 kilometers. It's kind of like Minecraft, where the world is generated based on a seed, just a random string of numbers. So you can give the same world to somebody else if you have a good time with it, but it's not like procedurally generated like as you drive down the road. But you get this junker car that you start off with. All of the parts are removable. The parts are in different conditions, and you can like fix them up and polish them up as you go. And you're just driving down this road, and once in a while you come upon a stop, and it could be one of multiple different kinds of like an abandoned grocery store. Like it's all like post-apocalyptic kind of a deal. So it could be like an abandoned grocery store, it could be a watchtower, it could be like a military checkpoint, and they're all abandoned except for sometimes they have these like mutants that you have to kill. And you find parts, you find food, you find water, and you just scavenge what you can, build up your car, and just keep kind of driving down the road as long as you can. And it's 5,000 real kilometers. So you get to the end of the road. Well, I mean, I guess, but there's more to do. But the roads are treacherous. I mean, they're windy. Your car is very, like I said, kind of falling apart, so you can't go too fast, or you end up, flipping over, and then you have to put the car back together again and move on. So there is a lot of challenge to it, but a lot of it's pretty much just kind of like cathartic, driving down the road, looking around you, using your binoculars to find stops, maybe heading off the road a couple miles to hit a good stop and getting some provisions and stuff. Sometimes you come across an old rusted husk of a car on the side of the road, and you can take your tires off and put them on the new car and polish that car up, and then drive down the road. Different engines and different coolants and stuff that you can get. So there is a lot of depth to it, and by the time you're like on the road and going, and you've built this car from scratch, and your trunk is full of things that you've scavenged from 12 different places along the way, like it really feels like you're on a journey, and you recognize everything that you have and where it all came from. And
that actually sounds like a lot of fun.
It is fun, but there's long stretches of time where you like not much is happening, and you're just driving and kind of keeping your eye out for places to stop. So if you like driving games, and you like just long driving games, and you find driving cathartic, it's a great game. If you want all action all the time, not a great game to play.
Sounds like a good game, Joe, for when you're not in the right mindset for puzzles and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
Friday nights, Saturday nights, it would be a good game for you for sure.
It's on PC.
Yeah, Steam.
I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah,
that sounds pretty cool.
No, it's good. And I like watching YouTubers play because they have their own stories and their own cars, and the other things happen to them as well. So, you can kind of follow their journey along, and the road is totally different because it's their own seeds. So different things happen to them, and it's been fun. So that's really kind of been all that I've been playing this past month. I'm going to get to that 5,000 kilometers and then probably stop playing, unless, an update comes out that adds a whole bunch of new stuff. But I'm having fun, and I'm going to play until I don't have any more fun.
New update, 6,000 kilometers.
Who saw it coming?
Yeah, and I'll just put on like
more open space.
Right. I'll put on like the streaming chiptune YouTube that one that I usually listen to. I'll just put that on in the background, and that's my radio as I'm.
Does the game have its own soundtrack, or is it?
The game does have a radio built into the car, and there are several different radio stations that you can tune into, and some have talking, some kind of like have a little bit of like diegetic hosts that talk about, and there's like hints about the whole storyline behind the apocalypse and why the whole world is abandoned and why there's only one road in the world and stuff like that. Some of it's in English and some of it's in Hungarian. But there are translations online for the Hungarian stuff, and then it's interspersed with music too. So there is a soundtrack if you want to listen to it.
That actually sounds kind of cool.
Cool.
I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah, if you like it, go ahead. Watch some videos on it first to kind of learn how to play, and then have some fun with it. It's not very expensive. One of those indie titles. So yeah, that concludes our catching up with you part of the show. I wanted to thank you guys for all of your support and help, you and Joe and Todd, for just being here and hanging out with me for the last 100 episodes of VG Embassy and nearly 54 episodes of Embassy exclusive.
What can I say? The snacks make it worth it.
I'm glad you enjoy the popcorn and the flaming hot Cheetos, because I do too, but I also enjoy just hanging out. Just this feels more like a bunch of friends just gabbing about video games, and just happens to be a conversation that also makes for a good podcast. So I never feel like Embassy exclusive is a whole lot of work. I just feel like it's a good chill time to hang out and do our thing.
For sure, dude.
And also being on the VG Embassy episodes as well. You guys have been on, we did the winter tracks, we did a couple of Halloween ones together. I think my favorite that the three of us have done together on the VG Embassy side was the Bad VGM episode.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
It was like just hilarious segment after hilarious segment, and there were some real stinkers on that show.
Yeah.
I would love to come back and do like a sequel
bring that
to that
one back another time. Yeah. That was good.
I also want to do another, like, not VGM but chiptune thing, like
Another
you and I
Chiplash?
did.
Yeah.
But Chiplash, right? But also bring Joe in on it. That was a fun episode.
Yeah,
at least for me.
for sure. The Diet has also expressed interest in doing an episode too. It's getting to the point where I'm like, there's so many things I want to do that putting out a monthly show, I have more than 12 ideas. So like these ideas that I have are going to go into 2025 and beyond. So I don't know. I'm thinking about reconfiguring. Joe and I have been talking a lot about what VG Embassy looks like episode 101 and beyond. So I don't know if we're going to be doing one episode a month. It might be more than that. There might be supplemental things that aren't necessarily podcasts where we visit some cool topics as a YouTube video, or who knows? The sky's kind of the limit. We're still kind of in the preliminary talks, but we want to open the VG Embassy brand, quote unquote, to other platforms and other types of media. So I'm really looking forward to that for sure.
Good stuff is on the way, gang. Keep listening.
Yeah. And some live stuff too. I told Joe about this, but I'll also probably tell you, Todd, after we record. I have a great idea for a live segment, which I think what we'll do is like do a YouTube live and then just kind of release it as a YouTube video. So if you're interested in it, you can join us. But Joe and I have this kind of idea cooking for some NES related music topics, which I think would be fun. But that being said, I don't know. What about you guys? What are some of your favorite memories from Embassy Exclusive and VG Embassy?
For me, it's got to be the scripted episodes we did, the Halloween ones. I had a lot of fun researching and writing and like making the jokes and like making those work. I know a lot of it was some obscure references and like weird stuff, but that weird stuff is right up my alley. So I had a really good time, not just like learning about those episodes, but actually writing them and performing them, and that was a good time. I hope we could do another something like that in the future.
Oh yeah, that will certainly not be the end of the scripted episodes. I really, really enjoy doing those.
For me, it would well, certainly doing this podcast, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but like coming to your place once a month and like hanging out and BSing about video games is, kind of right up my alley. So it's really just doing this has been a good outlet for me to be able to do that. Like, I can tell my wife, I can talk to my wife about video games, and she does play, but she kind of like glosses over after a little bit.
Right.
If I start getting into the weeds on some of this stuff, she's a good deal more casual than I guess I am. So not to say that I'm like a hardcore gamer or anything like that, but I definitely play more than she does. So this is a good outlet for me to be able to like get all that nerdiness out. That's fun. As far as like types of episodes, I really liked the you and I did. I think the first one, Ed, was the blind listens.
Yeah, Black Matrix 00 was the first one we did.
Is that what it was?
That was the prototype episode for that.
That was I don't even remember like what actual VG Embassy episode that was.
It was episode 3.
Yeah, it was pretty early on.
Yeah, no, maybe 5. Some more. It was like single digits. It was before I had released the show to the public.
Trying to figure out what the hell that game was a lot of fun. And I know you've done a bunch since, but maybe someday I'd like to do another one of those.
Yeah,
if we can
for
work something like that out.
That's the. I mean, part of me is almost like, let's just do only blind listens, because everybody tells me I love listening to the blind listens, I love being on the blind listens, I love doing the blind listens. I just don't think there are enough soundtracks out there. I mean, there are a ton of soundtracks out there that I don't know, but it's a matter of being able to source those from people. And plus, I also want to do other more educational kind of episodes as well. But if I had the production team behind me where I could put out like an episode a week or something, I think I would want to do. I would be totally fine with doing like a blind listen like the last week of the month. That's how much I enjoy doing those. So who knows? Maybe we get to that point 3 years down the road and we start doing more blind listens. But for now, yeah, I at least want to do like 2 or 3 blind listens a year. I think those are a lot of fun and fan and crowd favorites for sure. So you're on the list, Todd.
Awesome.
Joe, you too. We had a great blind listen together.
Yeah, I enjoyed doing that one.
Yeah.
That was I had never ever heard of the game before, but really enjoyed the music, and it was cool just, talking about it and trying to figure out what it was.
Yeah. That was No Storm? No, which one was that we did together?
It was some Sega CD game, I think.
It was the FMV. Oh, yeah. No, the name of it escapes me now.
Yeah.
But it had a really, really good soundtrack, like a Euro techno kind of a soundtrack.
But by the end of the episode, we were pretty close to getting it right. Like, we didn't know the game, but we had guessed the context pretty well.
Yeah. I've surprised myself with how close we've come a whole bunch of times, too. So, blind listens will be on the roster for sure for 2024. Beyond that, we have a bunch of write-ins. So I basically asked folks on Discord, if there was anything that, so for folks that were guests on episode 100, if they had anything else they wanted to say that they might have forgotten to say while they were on the show, any other guests or things that they wanted to shout out, to write in. If they weren't on the show, to also write in and let me know like what their favorite memories were, who their favorite guests were. And just go from there. So we had a bunch of folks write in from Discord, and a couple people actually sent some recordings along as well. First one up, Mr. Rob Nichols from Rhythm and Pixels sent in an audio blurb. So I haven't even heard this yet, so I'm excited to see what he had to say. Let's take a listen.
Hey Ed, this is Rob Nichols from Rhythm and Pixels, and I just want to congratulate you on 100 episodes of the VG Embassy. Man, when you first started the show, I was so excited about it because it was a lot of what I liked about Pixel Tunes Radio and what I loved about the VGM Jukebox with Keyglyph. And it was just a great idea, and I know it was being run by someone who's just a fantastic podcaster and producer and someone with just fantastic taste in music. So I'm just really, really happy for you, and I've been really enjoying listening to the 100th episode celebration bash, which, I mean, honestly, it's taken me a while to get through it. But yeah, and also the special 111th or whatever it is episode of Pixel Tunes Radio that you released. That was so much fun to listen to and to think back on me and Pernell's journey with the podcasting thing, and it's just to think about how it's changed, how we've changed, how our relationships have changed throughout doing podcasting, and how like we got to know you through the show. I'm not sure if we reached out to you or if you reached out to us when you were still with Mike doing Pixel Tunes, but it really, we were starting Rhythm and Pixels. I had not been listening to other podcasts at all, not really knowing that there were other VGM podcasts outside of the Legacy Music Hour. So you were helpful in introducing us to other shows and kind of getting our name out there as well, and kind of forming this our New England connection. Of all the other podcasts up there with you and Mike and Justin. So I'm just really happy for you about that, and I'm really happy to have gotten to know you and your family, your wife and your kids. They're just all fantastic people, and you're a fantastic person too. I want to thank you so much for having me on your show. I've really enjoyed just talking about my passions for drum and bass music, for DDR and ITG and all those things. Like I don't play a lot of video games, but the things that I am are very niche, and I know a lot about it, and I love it to death. And I really, thank you for giving me that platform to talk about that stuff. And I gotta say, I love the Embassy exclusives. It's a great format. I love the roundtable discussion. I feel like it's something that I've been kind of edging into with Purnell, with a more kind of a freestyle, free talky format show, and but having it more moderated, I feel like, with questions and answers and topic discussion, it's fantastic. And you have a fantastic group out there. So yeah, keep up the good work. I know it's a lot of work, and I know you're juggling a lot, even with the other show that you're doing, the Arcane Asylum. Is that what it is? Is that a Batman game? I forget. But yeah, anyway, no shade on that. I'm just saying, like, I know it's a lot of work, and I know that you're doing fantastic work out there. So again, congratulations from me and Purnell. Purnell's not here, but he wants to congratulate you too, because he's just that nice of a guy. So, all right, we love you. See ya.
Oh, yes, the Arcane Asylum.
The Arcane Asylum. I believe you mean Arcane Machine, but yes.
Seminal podcast.
No, thank you, Rob. That was really awesome. It was me that reached out to you guys originally, because I kind of wanted to start building a network. I didn't want to feel like back in the Pixel Tunes days, the early Pixel Tunes days, I didn't want to feel like all these VGM podcasts that were starting up were competing against each other for listeners. I kind of wanted us all to be friendly and share our listeners and share our passions and kind of cross over onto our different shows. So when I invited you guys on our show and you guys accepted, I was over the moon to have you guys on, and just, that was a fantastic show. I absolutely loved it. I'm so glad that we became good friends after that. I'm so glad you guys have been able to come up for Retro World Expo. It's just been a great time, and being able to, not only bond with each other, and this goes for everybody that I've had on the show, bond with each other for our love of video games and video game music, but then also kind of bond as friends and people about other things as well. It's really, really cool. I'm glad you guys are still going with Rhythm and Pixels. I really hope that either I can get down there and hang out with you guys at some point soon, or you guys can come back up. I know Rob just had a kid, so it's difficult to move around the country when you've got little ones, for sure. So, maybe at some point I'll be able to get down and chill out with them. But that was great. Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate that. And thank you as well, Purnell, for your virtual hugs. Moving on, we've got an entry from Utopia Nemo. Todd, you want to read that?
Nemo says, since I've already talked quite a bit about my favorite show moments, I'll take you up on your invite to talk favorite Discord moments, which I kind of see as the VG Embassy extended universe. And fair enough.
Yeah.
There are two that come to mind. First, that you created a dad joke channel to funnel some of my wayward dad jokiness into a less monopolizing outlet. This, of course, is very funny, but it's not unique. You've added lots of channels where small groups of people can talk about stuff they like without alienating folks who don't care about those things. That's awesome. I should say, as a Discord denizen, I also appreciate this because I can mute channels I don't care about.
Yes, agreed.
The second moment that comes to mind is Todd asking me what's new, and I fully agree with this sentiment. He says, for those who don't know, this originated from a crazy dream I had about LeVar Burton getting canceled, resulting in his lines in Star Trek TNG getting overdubbed with the voice of an Asian woman. So periodically Todd would ask me, what's new? Which was my cue to come up with the most outlandish fabricated news story and try to pass it off as fact. Some of them still make me laugh. And true, I actually haven't done that in a while, and maybe I should, but that's one of my favorite Discord, VG Embassy Discord memories of that whole community.
He's come up with some doozies too.
He really has.
It's a lot of fun. It's great just having that Discord and having a lot of those in-jokes and just being able to joke around. And sometimes I just, if I'm having an off day, or my health problems are flaring up or whatever, I can go in there and see a bunch of people laughing and joking and having a good time and join in, and it always brightens up my day a little bit. So I'm glad that we have that. I'm glad you see it as part of the VG Embassy extended universe. That's actually kind of clever. It almost makes me feel like a movie series. Joe, you want to read what Chris Murray has to say?
Chris Murray says, I think some of my favorite episodes would be number 42, RPG Battles with Joe and Todd.
Nice.
Embassy exclusive and RPGs, yes please. Blind Listen and DDR with Rob. Number 58, Run and Gun with Dan, and some of the console-focused solo episodes on consoles I would otherwise not care about. Overall, I think the guests do a great job balancing their point of view or passion and expertise with the overall vibe of the VG Embassy. Here's to 100 more.
RPG Battles. Jeez, I thought that was a Pixel Tunes episode. That was so long ago. That was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah,
too.
I like that one a lot. I would do another one of those even. There were so many that we didn't get to that. I mean, that's kind of always been my jam.
You mean there aren't just 10 RPGs out there?
I've heard of a few others.
Yeah, no, that would be a lot of fun for sure. Or, we can pick different kinds of stuff. We can pick town themes or any kind of stuff from a dungeon themes from RPGs. I mean, I think that would be a lot of fun.
That'd be cool too, yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's put that on the back burner. We'll think about that. And I'm also glad that he likes some of the solo console-focused episodes. Those are a lot of fun, too. I love just pulling off game consoles that I haven't used for a while off my shelf and just kind of diving into their soundtracks. That one I did on the Neo Geo CD where I compared the Neo Geo CD soundtracks to the regular Neo Geo console soundtracks was a lot of fun and surprised me a lot. There were a lot of times where the CD audio was not as good as the Neo Geo audio, and I thought it would have been the other way around. So I'm glad we're all learning some new stuff when we do those.
Yeah, I like those myself. It's just like he says. It's stuff I otherwise never would have cared about, but I like learning stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. And those consoles, after I get interested in them on the show, tend to stay on my shelf, and I continue to play games to this day. So I'm adding more and more retro consoles as we go. I say looking at my Atari 7800, which I've just dusted off. Ryan Steele says, favorite VG Embassy memories? Simply roasting the squad with D's nuts, memes, and poop pipes gifs. I also got your VG Embassy memory right here, Todd.
Okay, duly noted.
He wants to give you his pipe.
I guess he does.
Metalman says, I'd like to +1 all of the shout-outs from the 100th episode. The guests, topics, and formats that were called out then were highlights for me too. VG Embassy gave me a much-needed place to go after VGM Jukebox ended, and it grew into a way to de-stress and cope with the existential threats that I had no idea were coming when the show started. Knowing that there are places like the Embassy where we can all enjoy some tunes and not be terrible to other people on the internet has been a constant source of comfort and joy since its inception. I have thoroughly enjoyed each and every episode. There are too many to mention, but I will highlight a few that come to mind at the moment. Marble Games with Logan. Those games sounded like a lot of fun, and it was really cool how Logan did all of that research. Surely a sign of things to come, and hats off to Logan for the extensive insights shared during the Undertale episode. The show about the Trials series. I didn't even know the series existed, or that it had such great music. I didn't do a Trails series. I think, so Chris Murray was on for a Falcom episode where he shared a couple of Trails games. So maybe that's what he meant by that.
Mayhap.
Yeah. Chris did a Trails series, I think, with Alex on VGM Journey. So he could be mixing them up. Anyways, but I'll just take that as a compliment on the Falcom episode.
The Phalanx show. I downloaded my first and only Sharp X68K soundtrack because of this.
Nice.
Demo scene music and chiptune music that could work for video games. Keep it coming.
Nice.
Paprium?
Yeah.
It was super cool to hear the great music with the composer-producer present, along with the fascinating story of how this game was developed. Thank you, one and all, for 100 fantastic episodes. I can't wait to hear what's next.
More of the same is next. We're just going to duplicate our 100 episodes again.
Basically, just start playing. Yeah. Episode 1 is 101.
Exactly.
Etc. And just kind of
we'll just re-record the same shows and the same topics with the same song.
Yeah, sounds good.
I'll just get Emily back. We'll just do Echo all over again. Some people would actually probably like that. Muddle Madness up next.
Congrats on your 100th. Enjoying every time I listen. Plus, love the recommendations of games from everyone.
Short and to the point. Thank you, Muddle Madness. And Professor Tom says, hey, happy 100 episodes. I really liked the Amiga episode, and I'm glad that I got to guest on your show. Here's to another 100. I've gotten a lot of different picks as favorite episodes from folks, and it's a really good spread. Like, it feels like nearly all the different types of shows and all the different types of themes I've done has been, like, shouted out as a favorite by all the listeners that I've heard from. So that's really cool. It feels like there's nothing that I'm, like, missing or something that I'm doing that's, like, not working with people. There's always somebody out there that it pleases, so that's really good to hear. I hope to continue that, like I said, for the next 100 episodes. So thank you guys so much for writing in, congratulating me. I really appreciate that. Shouting out your favorite episodes and your favorite guests. There's been a lot of talent and a lot of really good music packed into these last 100 episodes, and I'm glad that it is not falling on deaf ears. I put 100% of my soul and my love into these shows, so I'm glad it is showing through to all of you guys. And I can't wait to put out more. At the end of the show, we'll talk about what episode 101 will be and what we're going to be doing from then on. But that concludes most of our 100th episode celebration stuff, unless you guys have anything else you want to share before we move on.
No, I'm good.
All right. We are all celebrated out. We're going to visit some more traditional topics for the rest of the show. Todd, we got you up first. What's your track?
My track is called Barren Corridors. This is from Timespinner. It was released on pretty much everything of note in 2018, and the composer is Jeff Ball.
Nice.
Welcome back. That was Barren Corridors from Timespinner, released on just about everything in 2018. Composer Jeff Ball. This is a fun little track. I haven't gotten that deep in the game, so I haven't really heard that much of the soundtrack in game. But I did, for the purpose of choosing a track for this show, listen to the soundtrack on YouTube to select one, and this one kind of struck my fancy.
Yeah, good pick. I like this one a lot.
Barren Corridors. I'm picturing a grizzly in the hallway.
Bear in corridors. Who's driving corridor? Bear's driving corridor. How can that be? Anyways.
Sorry. That's all I got.
Another joke that rushes over everyone's head.
My topic for today, I was browsing around, surfing the information highway, if you will, looking for fodder for a topic for this episode, and I came across on IGN a little poll that was asking, would you buy a PS5 Pro just to play, I think it was Elder Scrolls 6?
No.
And the answer for me is no, but it got me thinking, like, it's been a long time since I've purchased. I actually can't even really think of an example where I've purchased a video game system specifically to play a game. The closest that would come to that for me would be purchasing a PlayStation 1 to play Final Fantasies 7, 8, and 9. I did not purchase a PS1 when 7 was released because I still had sour grapes over it not being released on N64. And so I didn't get a PS1 until way late in its life cycle. Like PS2 was on the market already.
Yeah.
But the first games that I bought for it when I did get one were the Final Fantasies. So that's probably the closest that I've come to that. So is there any game that you can think of, real or imagined, a series or, a remake of a game or anything, that you would buy a brand new gaming console, like a PS6 or a Nintendo Switch 2 or whatever, specifically to play? One game that would be the system seller for you.
That's a good question.
So that's kind of how it went with me with PS5. I mean, I knew I was going to get one eventually. And I knew that it was backwards compatible with the PS4 and that it's going to basically take the place of my PS4 for that reason. But really, Final Fantasy 16 was the game I knew I had to buy the PS5 for. I knew it wasn't going to come out for, Switch or Super Switch or anything like that. And I don't PC game very much. Although maybe now that I have my Steam Deck, I'll do that more. But that was the game that I, bought the PS5 for, basically. And there's going to be other ones, and I wanted to wait until I got a good deal on it and until there was enough of a library to make it worth it. But I'll say that was the catalyst. Had a Final Fantasy game not come out for PS5, I probably still wouldn't have made that purchase. So I don't want to say it's the sole game that was the reason for buying the system, but it was definitely the catalyst that said, oh, okay, well, now that there's a Final Fantasy game that I need to play, all right, I'll go get the system.
Gotcha. Right. I mean, it comes down to money for me, because obviously the more money the console is, the less I'm going to be inclined to buy it just for one game. I'd say, like, if the next Switch, whatever they want to call it, comes out at around like a $250 price point, and it's not $500-$600 like the Xbox and PS5 are, and they announced Mario Odyssey 2, I think I would justify it to myself to grab it. I just love the 3D Mario games. I like the 2D ones too, but the 3D ones, especially the flagship titles, really envelop me. And after 100%ing Mario Odyssey, I wanted more, so I think that would probably convince me to do it. I can't see justifying $500 or $600 for any game out there. Being mainly a PC gamer nowadays, I don't ever have to consider that kind of thing, because it's basically one gaming platform in perpetuity for the rest of my life, So, yeah, I'd say Mario Odyssey. Maybe, like, if they decided to come out with more Ridge Racer games and it was on like a handheld PlayStation kind of system or something, maybe. Like, that's another series that I'm really, really into. Or a new Katamari game would really kind of sway me. Price depending, of course. So I'd say if it were a Switch successor, again, in the $250 range, if it were a Mario Odyssey game, a Ridge Racer game, which probably would not be on a non-Sony console, or a Katamari game, I think those big three for me would be the ones that I would go after. Because GTA 6, I think, is going to be a console exclusive at first. It's not going to make me buy a console, even though I absolutely love 5. But I will be willing to wait until it comes out on PC before I play that one.
I think a lot of those, like, big titles like GTA or whatever, you can pretty much assume they're going to come out for even Sony big titles that are Sony exclusive games like God of War and whatnot are now starting to be released on PC too. So that kind of takes I don't want to say the need to have a PlayStation away, but it certainly takes the exclusivity of it away. Like, if I want to play these games, I have no choice but to to own a PS5.
And they just announced a bunch of Xbox titles are going to be coming to the Switch. So there's less reason to shell out all that money for an Xbox if you've got a Switch. So you've got that going for you as well.
As a longtime Nintendo fan, despite all of the damn you Nintendo moments, I'm still pretty much going to buy whatever the next system is. Mostly for the Marios and the Zeldas. It is not specifically for a Mario like an Odyssey 2. I would love to see another Mario universe.
Yeah.
2.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it were...
Mario Galaxy.
Under the Mario Galaxy, yeah. I mean, if it were a Mario 3D game of any kind, I think I would be in for it. Doesn't necessarily need to be Odyssey 2. I was just using that as a reference.
Right.
Like, I would totally do it if it were Odyssey 2, but if it were Mario... I don't know.
Whatever they call it.
Mario, forget about it. I would totally be down. It was just all in New Donk City. Mario Mafia.
I mean, it's definitely inevitable. It's going to come out eventually.
Yeah, exactly. And then they've already, started working on the successor system to the Switch, so it's only a matter of time before. I wonder why they don't release them like Mario games as flagship launch titles along with those systems, because it took forever for Mario Odyssey to come out.
Right.
So, I don't know. It really depends on what their launch lineup is going to be, whether I'm interested.
I feel like they were just trying to kind of space things out a little bit because Zelda was a launch title.
And that held its own as the game for the Switch for the longest time.
That was the game for the Switch. That was the system seller.
That's right. I keep forgetting because I played Breath of the Wild on the Wii U, so... Remember, it came out on the Wii U, too?
I do remember that, for sure.
Yeah, I didn't get the Switch right away. And normally when I would buy consoles... up to like the PS4 era, it was because of all of the possibilities those consoles had. I never bought a console as a kid or a teenager just to play one specific game. It was because, whoa, the breadth of these titles look awesome. The capabilities of this system look cool. Great stuff will eventually come out for it, but for now I'll have these, 4 or 5 launch titles that are decent. I just had the FOMO of not getting it at launch, so I would always pick them up. But that's just the kind of gamer I am. Yeah, that was a good topic. I do kind of wish you had put it in earlier, because I think reaching out, I'd love to hear what our listeners have to say about this. What game series or consoles, or game series in particular, would get them to
we can
buy
hack
a
out this
console?
entire segment and do.
Todd.
We can hack out this entire segment and do it next month.
Well, I mean, I think they'll chime in on the Discord for sure. So we'll see what they have to say. Let's move on to our next topic. Joe, what's your song?
My track is the title theme from Fairlight, released for the ZX Spectrum back in 1985, composed by Alphenwood and Ricksoft.
Wow, you're going super old school.
And we're back. That was the title theme from Fairlight, released for the ZX Spectrum back in 1985, composed by Alphenwood and Ricksoft. For anyone who has never heard of the game, Fairlight is an isometric adventure game from 40 years ago. This is one of those games where it wouldn't be as much fun to play today, I think, but if you find that sort of style of gameplay interesting, check out a long play or like a gameplay video of it so that you can get a feel for it. It doesn't hold up amazingly well, but I liked this track, and the reason I picked it was because I've been listening to a lot of chiptune things lately, and just wanted to pick something along these lines. I originally had a different topic today with a song to match, but ultimately I decided against it. Like I said earlier, I finished Final Fantasy 16 and didn't like it. But I thought maybe I'll find a silver lining to it. The soundtrack was terrible and boring and forgettable, but maybe that's not a bad thing. I've had some difficulty sleeping lately, and my original topic was going to be music to fall asleep to. You know, the best VGM white noise. And I had picked a track from Final Fantasy 16 that was going to match and sync up with what I wanted to talk about. But then I realized that is, on its face, boring. So I'm going to do something a little easier and, go for some low-hanging fruit. Instead, let's talk about your favorite racing game ever.
Totally opposite.
Even if racing games aren't your usual thing, everyone has at least one old favorite. I was really into racing games when I was a kid, and then for about 30 years got out of it. It just happened to not be my thing. But then when my kid got old enough to start playing Mario Kart with me, that's gotten me back into at least that game again, which I think is kind of got a little bit of everything. It's fun, it's bright, it's colorful, it's easy to play, it's difficult to master.
Yeah.
And it's got, a million tracks and characters and customizations and things like that. So it's kind of everything you could want in a racing game, especially when you're playing with a kid. Going back from when I was younger, I loved Pole Position, the original arcade machine. I remember that from when I was a little kid. It was in the movie theater in my town, and I'd have to beg my parents for quarters to give it a try. And it always seemed like, to them, like a waste of money at the time, but that was one of the earliest games I ever remember playing. I had myself a copy of RC Pro-Am for the Nintendo, and that was a game that I put a million hours into back, when I was a kid and only had 4 games or something like that. And, you just played them forever, and that was one of them. And then when I finally got a Super Nintendo, I upgraded from RC Pro-Am to Super Off-Road, which was one I think someone got me as a gift at some point. It wasn't one I sought out, but someone got it for me. And again, as a kid without any money, I think I had a total of like 4 games. And that was, or at least, for the longest time until I started saving up to, buy other things. That was one that I just played the heck out of and remember fondly. And from there, it was kind of a 30-year gap. I played the occasional Mario Kart or something like that. But until Mario Kart 8 came out and I played it with my kid, I had fallen out of it for a while. So I'm happy to be getting back into fun, easy racing games that I can share with my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
How about you guys? What's your favorite racing game?
I played RC Pro-Am fairly recently and kind of enjoyed it.
Such a good game.
More than I thought I would, actually. To the point where I actually played RC Pro-Am 2 as well. Didn't finish it. There, some of the later levels got really hard, but I did finish the first one. That was good. I did play Ivan Iron Man Stewart's Super Off-Road on the NES, not the Super Nintendo.
Oh, the original. Okay.
So I played it. I played a ton of that. I played a lot of Cruisin' USA in the arcade when that was the big thing. And then I got the N64 version, which was ostensibly the same thing, but way less fun for some reason. Maybe because you're not sitting in the actual car style. I don't want to say controller, but the seat on the arcade game with pedals and stuff. I don't know if that kind of immersion changes the effect of it at all, but it wasn't really the same kind of feel. And the first game I played on PS3 when I purchased my PS3 was Burnout Paradise. I played the hell out of that game.
Oh yeah, man. My turn.
Your turn. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Every game ever made that has racing in it, I guess I'll say is my favorite. No, I'm a huge racing game fan. So I started with Night Driver on the Atari 2600, and then graduated to Rad Racer on the NES. Played the hell out of RC Pro-Am. I own both that and Rad Racer. Super Nintendo came around. F-Zero. You guys must have played F-Zero.
Oh yeah, F-Zero. Yeah,
played it, but I never owned it as a kid.
F-Zero, Rock and Roll Racing. Of course, it had that amazing Tim Fallon soundtrack.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one.
Then I graduated to Sega Rally Championship on the Saturn. Screw Daytona. Got the PlayStation, fell in love with Ridge Racer, played that over and over and over again. Burnout on the PS2, of course, and Ridge Racer 5 on the PS2 were some of my favorite games. And then moving on from there, the Flat Out series. Those guys went on to do Wreckfest, which I've played thousands of hours of. I still play online to this day. What else? Mario Kart from the SNES all the way up to the current one on the Switch. And the arcade, which I play on my racing wheel, which is fantastic. God, I don't know. Like arcade racers are my jam. Like I just love driving games in general. Put me in a car, give me a place to go, and I will have fun doing it. Doesn't matter if it's a sim or an arcade game. So this is a tough question for me to answer as far as what my singular favorite racing game would be. I don't think there's an answer to that. I think that it changes based on my mood, maybe day to day, because I've spent so many hours and so much time with all of these racing games that they're all like my kids. I love them all for different reasons, sometimes equally as much. But yeah, so that's all I really have to say about that. I mean, anytime a cool looking arcade racer comes out, I jump on it. And there's a game called Overjump which is coming out soon. It's basically it's made in Unreal 5. It's like a love letter to Sega Rally. It's going to have like the original courses, but very updated, modern graphics and shaders and stuff. And he's making it feel as much like the original Sega Rally as possible. And, going to be adding new tracks and stuff as well. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
Carmageddon. Carmageddon.
Oh, Carmageddon. Yeah, for sure. The original Carmageddon, I played on my iPad of all things. 100% of that, and then Carmageddon, the newest one that came out, Max Damage, was super good too.
Yeah, the one on PS4, right? Or that's what I played.
Yeah, I had it on Steam, but yeah, they did a Kickstarter for that, which I backed.
I remember when the demo for Carmageddon 2 came out, and it was really just one track, and like when the timer ran out, your game was over. But my friends at the time and I figured out that if you could get the zapper power up and just drive around zapping,
and you get more time for each pedestrian.
You get more time. And we could just max out the clock and just play it basically as long as we wanted to.
Until all the pedestrians are dead, and then basically run. But then you have 30 minutes left on it.
Right, so you just drive around aimlessly. I mean, obviously I ended up with the game too, but we played the hell out of that demo.
Yeah, Carmageddon was great. It was a lot of fun. Wreckfest is really the only one that I play online. I think the new Carmageddon also has online play. I think the old Carmageddons also had online play, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but I think it was I don't want to say pre-internet. The internet existed, but like it was much more, I think, a like direct dial-up style of multiplayer rather than...
Yeah, they didn't have centralized servers.
Right, right.
But still lots and lots of fun. I'm confident enough in my Wreckfest skills that I can play online and not come in last place every single time. Probably the only online game that I can do that with. But yeah, good question. And I should do a racing game episode at some point. The problem with, like I said, with a racing game episode is I can come up with 20 titles off the top of my head that I love. How do I whittle that down into a digestible show?
It'd have to be really obscure stuff.
Really obscure stuff, or kind of just narrow the scope of 8 and 16-bit games, or from a particular publisher or whatever.
Cool.
Good topic. Moving on to mine. My track is going to be Next Steps from Celeste 64, Fragments of the Mountain, released just this year on PC, composed by the composer of the original Celeste, Lena, Raine. Okay, that was Next Steps from Celeste 64, Fragments of the Mountain, released on the PC in 2024, composed by Lena, Raine. This is a fun little track, very wintry, and I don't know, kind of felt like the track that you picked, Todd. That's why I said when we were kind of listening to it, we've got some like kind of laid back stuff on our roster. Joe's maybe not so laid back, but still kind of, yours was a little more jaunty, I think.
Yeah, okay.
But this one is kind of laid back, wintry tune. It was fun. Celeste 64 is kind of like a free side game that the developers of Celeste made. It's a 3D platformer, kind of in the style of an N64 game. But the gameplay is kind of similar to Celeste, where you've got, jump dashes, you're collecting strawberries, there's spikes everywhere. Doesn't look as hard, though, I don't think. Looks more exploratory than, like, action-packed.
At least a little bit of gameplay that we watched in the video that you were playing.
The very beginning or towards the end?
Yeah, well, like I said, the game's only about a half an hour long, so it's...
Is it just a demo that's out, or is it...
Yeah, I think it was just kind of like a gift that the programmers gave to Celeste fans. They're not charging for it, so...
Oh, cool.
Yeah. The soundtrack is available on Bandcamp. I think it's like $1 for all 5 tracks that Lena Raine wrote, so they're kind of just giving this stuff away. But it basically ties in with my subject, my topic, because I was wondering what are some game series that have reinvented themselves and succeeded, or conversely, would have done so and failed. What does a game series need to do to change dramatically and still keep you buying and playing? Now, this topic came about because of stuff that Joe and I have been talking about with kind of quote-unquote reinventing VG Embassy, or changing up a lot of stuff about VG Embassy. What kind of things make that work? What keeps people engaged? So I was wondering, in relation to video games, like, same deal. What are games that maybe started in a completely different way than they ended up and are still good, that still have you playing them? I can think of, obviously, like, Zelda has changed a lot.
I was just going to say,
over
Zelda.
the years. Mario obviously has
sure.
changed over the years. I mean, we're going for the low-hanging fruit here, but even games like, Castlevania has started off as a very linear kind of a platforming game and has gone through lots of iterations to varying degrees of success.
With regards to, I'll say, degrees of success, I'm thinking of, I'll go right back to, because it was your track, the N64. That's when all the best-known properties that Nintendo had tried 3D, and some of them worked great, like Mario and Zelda, and some of them worked not great, like Mega Man and Castlevania. Those were just awful titles, such that, well, with Mega Man, they immediately went back to not immediately, but they went back to 2D, and, the latest games have been great as a result, I think.
Right.
Same thing with most of the Castlevania games. But on the flip side, like, Metroid did great when it went to 3D. Zelda went great when it went to 3D, and then went great again when it went to open world. And there really haven't been very many bad Mario games. I mean, some of them have been a little stale, but there haven't been any that have been like, oh, this is awful. Why would anyone ever play this?
Right. I think of all of them, Sunshine is probably the least well-reviewed.
Yeah.
But it's still a decent game.
And yeah, I still think that's a pretty good game.
Yeah.
So the jump to 3D was great for some games and not great for others. That's what I'd say would stand out most in my mind.
How do you suppose you could do a Mega Man game in 3D such that it would work? Now, obviously, what they tried didn't work, but is there a 3D Mega Man that you think would actually...
I think kind of like
I'm thinking Mega Man meets Breath of the Wild. Like a big open world Mega Man game.
Okay, I was going to go more the first-person shooter route. Where, maybe. I mean, you wouldn't see a Mega Man on the screen, so it'd be more like Metroid Prime, I think, but as in the Mega Man universe. Maybe a little more action-y than Metroid Prime, but differently themed levels depending on which boss. The structure would still be the same. You pick your boss, you go into their domain, and then you would enter a closed arena at the end and fight whoever the boss was. Get your charge power-ups. All the moves that Mega Man has in 2D have been done have been done successfully in 3D and first-person shooters.
Sure.
So I can't see why they wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd enjoy Mega Man not being able to see Mega Man. I definitely like the third-person perspective, and I've thought many times that, almost any property would do really well in a big open world game if it was done right.
Yeah.
And I would kind of love to see a, like light platforming elements, but mostly just, like world exploration and trying to find those bosses and take them down to, get their powers. I think that'd be a lot of fun. It would add a new element to the gameplay, whereas with the 2D games, I mean, there's only one way you could go, and as long as you live long enough and survive the platforming challenges, you're going to make it to the boss.
Right.
But I like the idea of actually having to, like, find clues to hunt down the boss and then having, like, a really good battle. I think would be a lot of fun.
Or piece things together, do not collectathon style, but each boss has an anti-boss device somewhere, scattered throughout the different worlds, and you need to explore each of those worlds and get the thing that brings down that particular boss, and it makes that boss fight easier for you, but you have to face those challenges along the way to do it.
I think that'd be awesome, especially along with the idea of finding, rush bounce or rush jet or rush submarine or something like that, so that you could even get to those other worlds.
Right.
I think it would basically be like a Metroid meets Mega Man meets Breath of the Wild kind of thing. I think would be a lot of fun.
I love it. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
How do we make this happen?
Start learning how to
Capcom, are you
develop
listening?
a game.
I think
I played the heck out of that.
Yeah.
a kind of an example of a game that did poorly with this would be Duke Nukem. Duke Nukem Forever, one of the most colossal market
Yeah, but did that
failures.
change much from the original Duke Nukem 3D, though?
I don't know. I never played it.
Oh, okay. They are very similar. Like they're first-person shooters in kind of a retro style. So, I mean, the original Duke Nukem was a 2D side.
It was 2D, yeah.
So I would say that was an example of a successful one when it went to Duke Nukem 3D. But Forever, I think, was too much like 3D, that it wasn't really a quote-unquote reinvention of the series at that point.
Is that just an example of a game that was overhyped because it took so long to come out?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
I mean, ultimately, it was exactly what you expected it to be.
I actually enjoyed it when I played it, so I didn't really get all the derision it got. But that's just me.
I think I picked it up for like $1.50 or something like that, in the bargain bin.
It's worth that much.
Yeah.
It's worth at least that much.
I don't regret spending what I spent on it, but I don't know if I'd have ever paid like full price for it.
Yeah. I mean, Final Fantasy is also a good example. It looks nothing like Final Fantasy 1 for sure. It's been more gradually reinvented, I think, over time. Like obviously starting with Final Fantasy 7 and moving into that pseudo 3D and then fully getting into 3D.
You could make an argument that it reinvents itself basically every time. Like the battle system is always different. There are themes that reoccur. There's almost always a character named Sid, and you have like Ifrit and what have you. But
there's always some sort of innovation there.
Right. There's always how you interact with the game is different in almost every iteration of it. And the world largely is very different. I don't even think any of them are in the same arguable universe. I could be wrong on that. Different characters every time, etc. Like, it's different every time.
Yeah. But is it a reinvention? Is the question, I guess. It depends on what you want to consider a reinvention.
I think it just sort of evolves over time to what
it's more of an evolution.
Think its fans and players want.
Yeah.
And failed at this time.
I kind of
sorry.
No, well, I'm curious.
I'm still bitter about that.
Joe not holding back on Final Fantasy.
I put a lot of hours into that. I expected better.
I am curious what our listeners had to say, so let's throw it over to Todd. It's a nice short one for you from Alex Messenger.
Alex says, a series that reinvented itself and absolutely pulled it off was the Yakuza Like a Dragon franchise. Typically, they had a beat-em-up style that was a lot of fun, but in more recent entries, they went in a turn-based RPG direction and somehow made it work. I would even go as far as to say that the newest entry, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, to be an early contender for Game of the Year, in my opinion.
Wow.
Strong words.
I didn't know they went to turn-based RPG.
I didn't know that either.
That's quite a reinvention there. And if it works, it works.
I'm not familiar with the series at all. I mean, I see it mentioned a lot, but I know very little about it.
Yeah, same. It's one of those things where it's like, it looks interesting, but I have no idea where to get into it at this point because there's been so many games and so much lore around it. It's like, it feels a little bit overwhelming.
Next up, the Dyad writes, game series that reinvented itself, Grand Theft Auto. Not so much in the content, but very much in the mechanics. I remember playing the top-down GTA 2 for hours and really loving it. I still quote some of the voice clips. When GTA 3 was announced as the third-person style, I was really disappointed. I held off playing it for a long time, but when I did, I acknowledged it was also fun, just in a different way. It's not really my cup of tea, I didn't play any of the sequels, but I recognize that it's extremely popular. Damnation, no donation, no salvation. That's kind of how I feel about the Fallout series. They kind of did the same thing. And in my opinion, they just got better. I mean, I love the Fallout games and put billions of hours into the most recent one, and hope another one comes out.
GTA is a series I never really put any time into. I very briefly played 3, but kind of bounced off of it.
Yeah, I think after the PS2 days, that was kind of the end of it for me.
Yeah, I played the overhead ones a bit, and they were okay. They were like novelties for me. I would kind of like screw around with it and stop playing. When it moved to 3D, I don't think the technology was there yet enough for me to like enjoy it. But then Grand Theft Auto 4 is when I jumped back on the bandwagon, and I really, really like 4. So I was hyped for 5. And then, like I said, that's one of my favorite games of all time. So one of the few games that I replay quite a bit. I normally don't replay games very much. So, but yeah, again, yeah, it's a reinvention in gameplay mechanics, but not necessarily in content, which makes sense to me. Chris Murray says, I'm not sure everyone would necessarily agree, but I think both Mario and Zelda totally reinvented themselves with the shift to 3D, and it very much changed the future direction of these games. Thankfully, both also continued to bring 2D and more classic-style entries throughout the series, but it was a hard pivot from the SNES days to the N64. The other thing that came to mind was FIFA, which transformed itself from a soccer game to a complete and total psychological warfare between EA and the consumer, designed to strip you of your money, pack by digital pack, while being a worse and worse game year after year.
But how do you really feel?
That can be said of any of those sports franchise games that EA
just has
does.
the most familiarity with FIFA. But yeah, and anything EA touches pretty much turns into a microtransaction hellscape. But yeah, I mean, again, with Mario and Zelda, we had already mentioned those, and it's a matter of how you interpret the word reinvention. You know, it's still Link going through Hyrule, trying to rescue the princess in most cases, and you could ostensibly see the events of Breath of the Wild happening in a 2D plane like Zelda 1, you know?
Oh, for sure.
So it's not a reinvention in terms of story or theme, but in terms of the game itself, yeah, and it translates very, very well into a 3D world, that original kind of game.
Although Zelda tried really hard to reinvent itself from the first game to the second.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I loved Zelda 2, but I think I'm probably alone in saying that.
It was the
I think,
first
I
Zelda
think
I
a lot
played,
of people
so
really don't care for it in the same way.
I thought it was
I didn't care for it for a long time, but I played it within the last 10 years, I don't remember, a few years ago, and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it was mainly the disappointment of it not being
another Zelda, yeah.
that colored everybody's opinion of it.
For sure.
And that's probably what made Link to the Past for Super Nintendo so good, was what fans really wanted after the first one and after the second one. Plus, it was just an amazing game.
Todd, I'm sorry I didn't mean to do this, but you can read Ryan's.
Reinvented Dynasty Warriors 1 was a fighting game. The series we know and love is based off a launch title sequel and became the mega success formula we call Mosu games.
Musou.
Failure, Banjo-Kazooie, D's Nuts and Bolts.
Got him.
We were ready for its change formula, and people just wanted the collectathon magic. Typically, I love the lore and vibe of these series. I can handle dramatic gameplay changes. Like Castlevania expanded from its original concept to the side-scrolling exploration genre it helped craft, it also made a quick hack-and-slash God of War style game, which I still enjoyed, with a vastly superior boss battle than SOTC. I recently
Shadow of the Colossus.
Shadow of the Colossus. Oh, okay. I recently beat Shadow of the Colossus. It was okay.
Ooh. Shots fired.
Is he referring to the N64 game? Castlevania game?
No, that's something of the darkness, wasn't it?
That's Lords of Shadow. Wait, well, which one are you talking about?
He said Castlevania expanded from its original concept to side-scrolling exploration genre. It also made a hack and slash
yeah, I
God
was
of
talking
War
about
style.
Lords of Shadow. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't think I've played that one.
It's good depending on who you ask. You ask any Castlevania fan, they'll tell you it's the worst thing that ever came out, even worse than the N64 version. As a 3D God of War style game, I thought it was really, really good. The sequel is not, the second Lords of Shadow, but the first Lords of Shadow I think is worth a play for sure. And yeah, I did have a cool Colossus boss battle as well. Banjo-Kazooie, Nuts and Bolts, yeah, I think that's another. It's staying within the 3D realm, and it's not the kind of 2D to 3D that we've been talking about so far, but it's enough of a gameplay transition that people were like, this isn't really doing it for me. I just want more mascot platformer stuff.
Next up, Kung Fu Carlito writes, my answer to both the success and failure of reinvention is Street Fighter. Big surprise for me, but hear me out. Back in the day, Street Fighter's long-running joke was that they couldn't count to 3. The success of 2 and its iterations really painted Capcom into a corner. And although people look back on 3 and its iterations fondly, they definitely fumbled the ball. Ryu and Ken were back, but the rest of the cast were completely different. That, coupled with the new parry mechanic being hard to approach for new players, and the trend in gaming towards 3D games, pretty much signaled a dark era for fighting games. From around 2000 up until 2009, fighting games were out of the spotlight, relegated to the competitive scene and some small successes of a Tekken, Mortal Kombat, or Soul Calibur release. Then Street Fighter 4 came out. It was a fully 3D modeled 2D fighting game that brought the series back to basics, and welcomed a whole new era of fighting game fans. The roster was full of your favorites with a few new faces. The stages were bright and colorful, and called back to your fond memories of World Warrior locations. All your favorite music was remixed, and you also got cool new flashy super moves that could help anyone make a comeback. All that helped Street Fighter and fighting games in general make a comeback. It's a lesson in knowing what made your creation popular in the first place to help bring it back into the hearts of longtime fans. And welcome future longtime fans into the mix. This weekend of recording is the Capcom Cup, an annual tournament that anyone can enter and qualify for, and the payout to the winner is $1 million. $1 million! Biggest payout for a fighting game tournament and a signal to the renewed interest in Street Fighter and the excitement of fighting games that follows it. Welcome to my T-Hawk Talk.
That's interesting. I love Street Fighter 3, and all of my friends and I were super hyped about Street Fighter 3, and particularly Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. We never heard anything negative about it. Magazines were loving it. So, I don't know, to hear Carlos talk about Street Fighter 3 in kind of a negative light was a little bit of a shock to me. I always considered it a very good and very well-loved game. I kind of fell off when Street Fighter 4 came out because I didn't really like the transition to 2D. Or 3D. I kind of wish that they had kept it the classic Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 3 style. So maybe that's just me. I don't know. I mean, I played 4. I didn't really play 5 at all. I wasn't very into it. Street Fighter 6 looks kind of interesting, but again, I think I'm kind of hopped off the series.
I'm with them on the concept. I mean, I'm not big into fighting games, but I'm with him on the concept of knowing what makes your creation popular in the first place.
Right.
And I wish that game series did more of that. You know, finding a way to keep it feeling new and fresh, but giving the existing fans something to come back for.
Right.
And some games do it great. I'm especially happy with the Mario and Zelda games lately. They've been a lot of fun to play, and they've had the feel that I go for with some degree of reinvention. I talked last month or a couple months ago, about how much I loved Mario Wonder, and that's I think a perfect example of taking what fans love about the series, the fun gameplay, colorful characters, and basically reinventing every single level in that game to have a different mechanic. And some of them worked great and were fun, and some of them were really difficult, but were tougher to get. But it made the game feel fresh and new, but also familiar at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. And franchises like Sonic kind of did a similar thing too, where they started off great, they kind of strayed from what originally made them so good, and then they were like, oh, maybe this 2D stuff is where we should stay. Like, we don't have to do weird 3D adventure games for people to like it, because they really don't. And now they've come back to basics and have started making better games again. So,
with apologies to Sonic fans, some of those 3D Sonics were painful.
Oh yeah, for sure. And they didn't like them either. So after like Sonic Adventure and Adventure 2, like, things steadily went downhill. But now, with Sonic Mania and a lot of the 2D games coming back, it's back to people are happy again. So that's cool stuff. We do have entry from Red Hua. He sent an audio clip in, so let's give it a listen.
Hello everyone, this is Red Hua from the VG Embassy server. With regards to today's questions, I will say that first with regards to favorite guests and favorite episodes, I don't have a particular one. They're always a joy to listen to. I always like hearing everyone's picks and tastes in music, even if it might not always be like my cup of tea, but I still nonetheless enjoy hearing what they bring and input on the tracks, and I also like to hear the inputs of also the listeners. That's always nice. Now, with regards to favorite moments on Discord, I will say that it's always funny when a debate on what constitutes as industrial or not. I think I brought that up before, but it's always funny to check out. I also always like to check the dad jokes thread. There's always funny stuff being posted there. Now, with regards to the second question, which is about the game series that have reinvented themselves and succeeded, or genres, let's say even, I will say one very prime example is Ninja Gaiden. Very excellent transition from 2D to 3D when it moved into on the Xbox originally. It kept the challenge, because Ninja Gaiden on the Xbox was a really difficult game. I mean, at least it had a steep learning curve, I would say, until you get the hang of it. Much like the original trilogy on the NES. Also, I would say another great example would be, it wasn't so much an original series, I would say, but I think Yakuza is the best example of translating a beat-em-up game into 3D as well. Because a lot of companies before that had tried to bring beat-em-up games to 3D, and it always failed one way or another. One game that I think did it okay, that was, I believe, supposed to be originally a Streets of Rage game, and then it got changed, was Die Hard Arcade. That game, I think, did it pretty well, but Yakuza perfected the formula, I think. And as for games that have tried to do so and then failed, so many. I think the main issue is just that once an original game series moves to 3D, it needs that one defining factor that makes it unique and keeps the stance of the original game. Because some other games, once they've gone to 3D, it's okay, well, other games have already done that, and just sort of becomes bland and generic. I mean, maybe one example would be when they tried to bring Bionic Commando into 3D. I felt like the 3D transition just wasn't anything particularly special. Yeah, I think that summarizes it all together.
Oh, yeah, a couple of good examples there, Red Hua. Thank you so much. Yeah, Bionic Commando, the 3D version sucked. I was super psyched for it and very disappointed when that one came out. And Ninja Gaiden, I think, was a great example, too, because that definitely... obviously it was a much more of a platforming game than a fighting game when it originally released on the NES, but when it came out on the Xbox, it turned more into a 3D fighting game with combos and stuff. So I feel like even more than a 2D to 3D translation, that one was a series that really reinvented itself and did get some popularity behind it. I don't think they're making those games anymore, though.
I'm not even sure that I knew that Bionic Commando got a 3D release.
Yeah.
I knew they did that. Bionic Commando Rearmed, that sort of...
It came out around the same time. So essentially the Rearmed game was supposed to be kind of like a hype driver for the 3D game that came out, and it ended up being kind of the other way around. Everybody really liked Rearmed, but the 2D or the 3D game was just not there at all. That was the green and brown era of video games. Everything was super drab.
Right.
Everybody was just so gruff, and there's not a single lick of humor anywhere or levity. And it was tough. It was very difficult to play and watch.
Dark times in gaming.
Indeed. So those are some great examples. Thank you, Red Hua. Moving on to Metal Man. Metal Man says, as Tears of the Kingdom is one of the very few games I have played in the last year, it's hard for me to think of any other series right now. I've missed many of the titles between the first few entries in the series and Breath of the Wild, so I can't speak for how the game has changed between those points in time. Hopefully I don't say anything that is at odds with the dozens of titles in between. The part that has remained largely the same over time is something of a running joke in our family. The same old princess, or some incarnation of her, keeps needing to be rescued from the same old bad guy by the same old hero. You'd think that Zelda and Link would start leaving letters for future generations to watch out for this dude, but they often seem to be surprised. My son and I are now experiencing some of the major plot developments towards what I assume to be the final chapter of Tears of the Kingdom. I'm struck by some subtle but significant differences in how the roles of the central characters have evolved. Zelda started as a helpless damsel in distress, with no memorable dialogue in the first game. Without giving away too many spoilers, the character development in Breath of the Wild was largely about Zelda's personal struggle to become powerful enough so that she herself could contain Ganon. You would think the years of keeping Calamity Ganon locked up in the castle in Breath of the Wild would be enough personal sacrifice for one lifetime, but she goes on to make even greater sacrifices in Tears of the Kingdom. The complete dependence upon Link in former titles has now been replaced by determination and grit that is only matched by Link and the other sages. Yet she continues to rely upon Link for what only Link can do, but their relationship becomes much more of a partnership and less of someone fulfilling their duty to the ruling class. I think of these latest two games as the story, finally, as the name implies, being a story about Zelda. Again, I can't speak for how those games may have been explored in earlier titles. For the other major characters, we do occasionally see cracks in Link's armor. He continues to be strong and silent, but we see him struggle with moments of vulnerability. Zelda even saves him on occasions, so that he can live to fight another day. Likewise, Ganon becomes as terrible as ever, but he doesn't exactly start that way. These changes, although subtle, I think result in characters that are a bit more believable in our current times. The old assumptions from 1980s plots of characters essentially being born good or evil is replaced by characters with strengths and weaknesses that develop over time and are molded by their experiences. It makes for more memorable stories, and I'm hopeful that it's at least a little more inclusive than the worn-out damsel in distress plots of yesteryear. Okay, is that a reinvention, though? Or is it just an evolution of... is it just character development?
It's character development. I mean, I think without playing all the other Zelda games, it's hard to get a feel for how much the series has changed since the original.
Yeah.
Everything he says about the character development is spot on.
Spot on, for sure.
But the actual gameplay has changed a ton. Although, honestly, not at all between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. They were both amazing games,
right?
Nearly perfect, but they were almost identical games.
Yeah, just more crafting in Tears of the Kingdom, for sure.
Right. So I guess if you're getting at, long-term character development, yes, there are some, Zelda's a great example of a series that has done that over the past 40 years.
Yeah.
It's done it for gameplay as well.
Right. Maybe reinventing the roles the characters play in the games is what he was trying to get at. That's kind of how I feel he was going for, taking it in a different direction than most of the other people were taking it.
I definitely like, with the rise of indie gaming over the last 10, 15 years or so, you've seen more complex characters in all kinds of games. I mean, yeah, when we were kids, it was all just good versus evil. Everything was very black and white or shades of green and brown. And
yeah.
Now everything's more complex, and bad guys aren't completely bad, and good guys have their dark side too. And I like that Metal Man points out how realistic that is, and that kind of makes it appeal to a more modern class and a modern time of gamers.
For sure. Well, and the demographics of gaming are changing as well. There are much more, people of every gender playing video games now. So I think more representation of that is absolutely more important as well. It's not just a bunch of sweaty dudes in their basements, playing their Nintendos, playing their video. We have one last entry.
Moto Module says, it may be pretty obvious or ubiquitous answer, but I would definitely put the Zelda series in this category. Specifically on the successful side of the reinvention fence, I still love the older games for their story, action, and the feeling of being a hero in a fantasy land, but with the new ones, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I actually feel small in a giant world, and though Link is still considered a hero, of course, that is secondary to me personally to just existing in that world. I love literally just walking around, climbing to this climbing this to paraglide over that. Now, in Tears of the Kingdom, just jumping off a sky island and diving through the air, it just feels good to immerse myself in that world without the need for a specific goal. I understand it may not seem like a complete revolution, but for me, I play these games differently, and I enjoy that which is different about them. I don't think you're playing them differently. I think a lot of people do that. Just wander around and explore and do stuff.
Yeah.
And unless you're speedrunning the game, that's kind of the whole point.
That's kind of the whole
go
point.
left
Yeah.
when the game suggests you should go right and see what you can find.
Yeah,
And-
I do think there's some merit in that, in the sense of the original 2D Zelda games, NES and SNES. The world is static. Link is moving through them. It's you've got the world and here's your character. But now in 3D games, just by virtue of how the games are built, your character is static on the screen and the world moves around him. You know what I mean? So the focal point is more on the protagonist in this giant world, and he's static on the screen, whereas relatively in 2D games, the world is static and Link is moving through them. And I think there's a kind of a psychological difference there, and I think that's maybe kind of what he was getting at in terms of where the focus of the game is located. The original Zelda games could be argued that Hyrule is the main character and Link is just kind of walking through it. Whereas in these, it's your camera is following the protagonist, journeying through this much more immense land. The scale is different. And I think that can be interpreted as kind of a reinvention too. So it's a bunch of different ways you can look at it. Character development, psychologic effect on the player itself, and just down to straight up game mechanics. So
Right.
it's a deeper question than I thought when I asked it. Yeah. But I'm glad people interpreted it different ways and had different opinions on it. That's really cool. So it kind of makes me think about these things more differently when I think about the evolution of video games. I've done a lot of VG Embassy series, solo series, where I've covered the soundtracks of games from their original game up to their most current game. And, sometimes I just look at it in terms of gameplay or graphics or, it was 2D and now it's 3D. But there are other ways to look at these things too, like character representation and stuff like that. So I appreciate everyone that chimed in with this topic. Really kind of educated me. This was a fun show. This was a long show. But I'm so grateful to everyone who supported the VG Embassy and Embassy Exclusive for these last 154 total episodes between the two of them. And I'm glad everybody was able to get their opinions in. I'm really looking forward to the next 100, 200 episodes, however long we go on for. As I mentioned at the end of last VG Embassy, next episode, midway through March, will be a solo show. I did a fun revival of a show that I've only done once before, where I buy a blind box of indie titles from a site like Fanatical and take those random games that I got and explore the soundtracks and share those on the show. So I've got a bunch of cool soundtracks from games you may have never even heard of before, with a lot of cool stuff to share coming up. So I'm looking forward to that. And then beyond that, we've got blind listens, we've got more deep dives into game series, we've got more guests with knowledge beyond what I have about video games and video game music. It's going to be tons of fun. So looking forward to all that stuff. As always, you can head over to thevgembassy.com, look at all of our show notes, find links to places where you can find more soundtracks from some of the composers that we share. You can head over to patreon.com/thevgembassy, and there you can find out how you can support the show. And for as little as $1 a month, you get access to our exclusive Patreon lounge on our VG Embassy Discord, which, as you've heard from our guests, is a very hopping and happening place. And as always, I'd like to thank all of my Patreon folk at the end of every episode, starting with our tourist level, Cameron Childs and the Phantomire, our VG Emissary tier, Periodical, Chris Murray, Gannon, 11, Keyglyph, Kyle Kroll, Chris Myers, The Dyad, The Last Weekend, and Professor Tom. Our audio attaché members, Cameron Roma, Carlos, Muddle Madness, and Scott McElhone. And of course, our special agent, Ryan Steele. Joe and Todd, thank you for hanging out with me, as always,
Hey,
for this
guy.
episode. Lots and lots of fun. Looking forward to our next season, as it were, of the VG Embassy, and I'm hoping that we have a great time, and everybody has a great time as well. Until then, keep listening to Awesome VGM. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye, everyone.
See you later.
Bye.